So today is Martin Luther King Day, and I want to do what I've been doing pretty much every Martin Luther King Day, which is lay out for everybody the parts of his history that the mainstream of society doesn't want to talk about. So the part of his history that everybody's okay with talking about at this late date is the idea of equality. You know, I mean, when you look at the horrific systemic discrimination against black people in the United States of America, it's undeniably disgusting. You have slavery and you have segregation and Jim Crow, and you now, of course, the next phase of that is the war on drugs, where some people call that the new Jim Crow because it's used to crack down on people of color and poor white people, and you just throw them in a cage for tweaking their own consciousness slightly, and that the U.S. jails more people than every other country on Earth, which is a really wild thing to think about, that, for example, we jail more people than China. Shows you something's deeply wrong with how we're doing it here, but the part that everybody will talk about now is just the idea of, hey, equality. We shouldn't have segregation. We should have equal protection under the law. Even, like, people who may be genuine racists will tell you that even if they are that, and most of them will deny it, but they'll say, well, of course everybody should have equal protection under the law. You know, oh, of course, you know, wait, we shouldn't have a fucking colored water fountain and a white water fountain. Even most racists at this point will go, yeah, no, you don't separate the water fountains. That's nuts. And so this demonstrates one of the oldest tricks in the book, which is they deny you, they deny you, they deny you, and then once you win, they turn around and go, oh, obviously, of course. Oh, I was on that side all along. I don't know what you mean. And it's a classic case of if you can't beat them, join them. You know, and this is why many Republicans nowadays say, oh, Martin Luther King Jr. was a Republican, and he'd vote Republican if he was around today. Because they know you're not going to win that debate anymore, the debate of, hey, was he one of the good guys or one of the bad guys? They used to fight that back in the day. Now they know, oh, we can't win if we say he's the bad guy, so okay, can't beat him, join him. But he's one of us. He's been with us all along. I don't know what you mean. So, yeah, exactly. So you need to understand that. But again, that's the portion of his legacy that everybody will talk about, and everybody tries to steal it. Republicans will try to go, oh yeah, he was with us. And that's why we all agree he's great, but he's more with us than he is with you. The part of his legacy that people kind of push off to the side, sweep it under the rug, and shush about it is Martin Luther King was a committed anti-imperialist. He was also a committed democratic socialist. Now, you can say, Kyle, that you put your own spin on it, but you would be wrong if you say that. So, of course, I'm going to give you some quotes here to back it up. In a letter to Coretta Scott King in 1952, he said this, quote, I imagine you already know that I am much more socialistic in my economic theory than capitalistic, and yet I am not so opposed to capitalism that I have failed to see its relative merits. It started out with a noble and high motive, to block the trade monopolies of nobles, but like most human systems, it falls victim to the very thing it was revolting against. So today, capitalism has outlived its usefulness. It has brought about a system that takes necessities from the masses to give luxuries to the classes. So he continued on this topic in 1966, which is years later, and he said this, there must be a better distribution of wealth, and maybe America must move toward a democratic socialism. Call it what you may, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, but there must be a better distribution of wealth within this country for all of God's children. Now, think about what he said there, and think about how he's going to be portrayed today. Everybody's going to act today like we got his dreams were achieved. He had a dream, dreams were achieved, it's over. Let's wrap it up and all go home and have a sandwich. That's how he's going to be discussed today. But I just told you, one of the things he was most interested in was the distribution of wealth being unfair. Let me ask you a question. If Martin Luther King Jr. knew that the richest 6 people in the world have more wealth than the bottom 50% of the world combined, what do you think his reaction would be? 6 people, more wealth than over 3.5 billion people combined. What would his reaction be to half of workers in the U.S. making $30,000 a year or less? What would his reaction be to 20 million uninsured, 45,000 people dying in the United States every year because they don't have access to basic health care? What would his reaction be? Pretty sure his reaction would be, why the fuck are we stopping to celebrate my legacy without bringing up these very important facts and trying to fix them? What are we doing here? Because again, everybody's going to act today like, oh man, what a hero. And he made it. He won. Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act. Let's move along. And even if you look at him through that narrow lens, which is what the mainstream does, how many people are going to bring up that the Supreme Court axed many provisions of the Voting Rights Act recently? How many people are going to bring up gerrymandering, which is still a gigantic problem? How many people are going to bring up voter ID laws where the specific purpose is to block more people of color from voting, therefore making it more likely that the Republican wins? How many people are going to bring that up? Not many, right? How many people are going to bring up the war on drugs to say, oh my goodness, look at this. This is used for social control. This is used to crack down on people of color and poor white people and throw them in prison and take away their power. In fact, it's not just me saying that. It's Richard Nixon's top officials saying that. They came out and admitted a few years ago, yeah, that was the whole point. The whole point of the drug war was to do social control. We knew that the hippie white people and people of color weren't going to vote for us. So what do? I don't know, try to criminalize their what they do. You eliminate a problem that way. And we still have that system in place. But people will act today like, I don't know what you're talking about. We got the Voting Rights Act. We got the Civil Rights Act. Where's the problem? So, in April 1967, Martin Luther King gave a speech at Riverside Church in New York City. And in that speech, he called the U.S. government, quote, the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. If somebody says that today, they're laughed out of the room. Which is funny because our government is just as militaristic as it was then. Now, he was referring to the Vietnam War. I wonder what he would have thought of the war in Iraq. An offensive war against a country that didn't attack us, where minimum 200,000 civilians were killed. And by the way, we did torture, which is illegal under international law and illegal under domestic law. We have an 8th Amendment protection from cruel and unusual punishment in the Constitution. That's considered a ban on torture. But we tortured anyway. We have an extrajudicial prison, Guantanamo Bay, still open to this day. I wonder what Martin Luther King would think about that. He called the U.S. the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. Right now, we're bombing 8 different countries. 8. We have 900 military bases around the world that cost $100 billion a year to maintain. When you poll the rest of the world and you ask, which country is the biggest threat to world peace? They answer the U.S. by far. It's not even close. We crush North Korea, they say we're a bigger threat than. Russia, they say we're a bigger threat than. Saudi Arabia, they say we're a bigger threat than. And he said back then, my government is the biggest purveyor of violence on earth today. Now, you would think, based on how everybody treats Martin Luther King today, that it's like everybody saying that every step of the way. I don't know what you mean. He was beloved every step of the way. That's why we celebrate him today. It's so obvious that he was right about everything. No, people fought him tooth and nail. Not only did people fight him, he was a lone voice in the wilderness back then, standing up for things that were right. So the entire establishment, elitist, liberal media will act like Martin Luther King, amazing, so correct on everything. And everybody knew that. Interesting. Listen to this. The New York Times editorial board blasted Martin Luther King for linking the war in Vietnam to the struggles of civil rights and poverty. They said it was, quote, too facile a connection and that he was doing a disservice to both causes. They said there, quote, are no simple answers to the war in Vietnam or to racial injustice in this country. The Washington Post editorial board said that King had, quote, diminished his usefulness to his cause, his country, and his people for speaking out against Vietnam. Like that, it was nice when you were talking about, hey, maybe we shouldn't be overtly discriminatory against people for having a different skin color. That was all fine and dandy. We tolerated that. But now you're going to talk about not doing imperialism and militarism. You've, your usefulness has diminished. And then get this. In all, 168 newspapers denounced him after he gave his speech coming out strongly against the Vietnam War, where he fundamentally said, we are the terrorists here. That's what we are. The government is. We're using napalm and Agent Orange on innocent villagers, women and children, killing over 1 million people, innocent people. Why? Vietnam's not about to invade Nebraska. What are we doing here? He comes out strongly against that. 168 newspapers denounced him. I'm willing to guess that of the 168 newspapers, all the ones that are not bankrupt, defunct today are going to sing MLK's praises now, aren't they? You're going to go, yeah, well, obviously he was right every step of the way, and everybody knew that. Don't go back and look at our history of denouncing him. President Johnson immediately terminated his relationship with MLK when MLK came out strongly against Vietnam. And he said, quote, what is that goddamned N-word preacher doing to me? We gave him the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We gave him the Voting Rights Act of 1965. We gave him the War on Poverty. What more does he want? Man, is that a telling quote. In other words, that's LBJ saying, I don't deserve any credit for all the good things I did. For the good things I did, Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, War on Poverty, I don't even deserve credit for that, because what he's admitting is, it wasn't me, it was MLK, and it was the civil rights movement that pushed me to that position. And what do you want? Of course, I conceded and did the right thing in these few areas, so back up off me. Why can't I slaughter innocent civilians in Vietnam now that I was trying to appease you by giving you a few of the things you wanted, and now you want to, end the wars and stop massacring people? That's indicative of the entire Democratic Party today. Today. They don't do things because, a Democratic politician who takes a tremendous amount of money from Wall Street and the military-industrial complex and the private insurance companies, I was willingly going to do the right thing. No, we have to force them to do the right thing. It's the same dynamic at work today. 100%. This is what happened with Medicare for All, for example. What was it, 50 House Democrats that supported it? And you guys made it over 120. Because you said, no, we're not going to take no for an answer. We're going to vote you out if you don't do this. So to save your own ass, you're going to have to come out in support of Medicare for All. How telling is that? He's like, what do you want? I gave you a few things that you wanted. Now you want me to stop massacring people? How dare you? Well, it's because he actually cared about the issues. You're not going to buy off him as a constituency. Like, I guess you'll back my slaughter of innocents after I give you a little bit of what you want. Fuck that. No, he's fighting for the right thing, which is why he didn't stop fighting for the right thing. And let's be clear. He wasn't just standing up against the establishment, which he was. He was standing up against the sentiment of the entire country. See, we're under the misimpression today that, I guess the people are always anti-war because that's what the polls show today. Even though we're still in Iraq, still in Afghanistan, only 17% of America still wants to be in Afghanistan, but we're there. No, back during Vietnam, the war fever was peaking. And so the propaganda from the government convinced the population, no, we really should be there. So the polls show that people were for Vietnam. In fact, a Harris poll conducted after King's Vietnam speech found that only 25% of even African Americans supported him in his anti-war turn. Only 9% of the public at large agreed with his objections to the war. 9%. He was one of the 9% who stood up and said, this is wrong, and I'm going to explain why. And of course, he also launched the Poor People's Campaign in 1968. He wanted what he called a, quote, grand alliance between working people of all races to fight for a brighter future, to fight for a living wage, to fight for a job guarantee from FDR's Economic Bill of Rights. These are the things he supported. He was a democratic socialist. He said inequality in healthcare is one of the worst forms of injustice. That's a clear call for a Medicare for all system, a single-payer system. So today when you hear people talk about him, they're not going to bring up his democratic socialism. They're not going to bring up his anti-imperialism. Why? Because most of the people you hear talk about him are going to be in the establishment. They're going to be elitist to one degree or another, whether it's a certain newspaper outlet, whether it's CNN or MSNBC. And if they don't bring up his anti-imperialism and they don't bring up his democratic socialism, then they're going to give you the misimpression that his work is done. And you can go home and watch some TV. You don't need to be an activist. You don't need to fight. You don't need to protest. You don't need to call your congresspeople. You don't need to throw your weight around. You don't need to organize. It's done. That's why we're celebrating him. It's over. That's it. Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act, move along. Don't look into this thing any further. If they painted an accurate picture of him, that'd be a dangerous thing for them now, wouldn't it? Because then all of us would be out in the streets and we'd be fighting for Medicare for all, a living wage, free college, end the wars, legalize marijuana, end the drug war, a new deal. So remember to keep fighting for his legacy, because he was right. And if he was around, he would tell you, my work isn't even 20% done, son. So let's keep fighting. That's what he would tell you. Don't let the establishment pull the wool over your eyes and act like it's over, it's done. Man, what a great hero. Good thing we accomplished everything we were looking for, and now we could just all relax. No. They hated him at the time. The establishment despised him at the time. Despised him. And now they turn around and say, his work is done, and by the way, we totally supported all of his work. It's a trick, and it's a trap. Well, I'm here to tell you about that trap so you know how to react, and you know to keep fighting for his legacy, because his legacy is right.